Hello, I am Janet Raftis, Quantum Creatrix and Divine Feminine Channel, and I wanted to talk to you today about the importance of activating the presence of the Divine Feminine within you. And this is a hot topic right now, at least in in some of the spiritual metaphysical circles, and I feel like the reason why is because there's just such a need for that Divine Feminine presence in our world right now. And along with that, cyclically, it's sort of time for the Divine Feminine to make its rounds again. And so, you know, going back to 5,000 plus years ago, pre-patriarchal takeover of society, you know, it was a more of a matriarchal society. There was goddess worship. We have evidence of goddess worship going back like 40,000 years. Into Paleolithic times with cave drawings and the Venus statuettes that have been found. And so we know that the feminine presence was perceived and known and understood to be the essence of creation, like that which is capable of bringing something from the ethereal to the physical, right? And women were really, before they understood that there was even a male part in this, women were really revered as that life-giving force. And they were revered in all of their, you know, in the full spectrum of who we are as the female presence in the world. And so we were honored for the ability to bring life force energy forward, but we were also honored for being psychic, for being healers, for being wise. The crone energy was really honored. I mean, the crones were the elders, and they made the laws, and they channeled wisdom from the goddess, and all of this was very normal. And I'll be talking more about a lot of these different components. This is sort of just an overview of it. And the importance of that is that there was a time, and this was within our ancestral biological, you know, makeup. It's within our DNA, that essence. What's happened is that through the past 5,000 years of patriarchal rule, we have also added in a lot of the trauma of the patriarchal system, the structure and the oppression that has occurred as a result. Like going from being the wise elder, the crone was then vilified, and you know, we know what happened in the witch hunts and the Inquisition. You know, there was really, you know, it started out with like a massive gaslighting, and what I consider like the first propaganda, right? Like history, when history was being recorded, there was this shift of the patriarchy was in process, right? And the myths, the mythologies were shifting, or they were intentionally shifted, you know? It went from the mother deity, goddess, to the solar deity, and the stories changed to where the women were, you know, sort of like hysterical and out of control, like Hera plotting revenge on all of the women that her husband was out having sex with and getting pregnant. And, you know, to Pandora being like, you know, Pandora's box is this thing that sort of unleashed, you know, all of the evils upon the world, similar to Eve's experience. And, you know, really originally Pandora's box was known as a honeypot, and it held all the blessings. And that is just like an example. We also have like rape stories coming in where like Hades raped Persephone originally. Persephone made her own choice out of her own sovereignty to go into the underworld. That was the story. Medusa became of her own free will, originally took Poseidon as a lover. She took the sea god as a lover, and then it was later shifted to where Poseidon raped her. So there's really a gaslighting coming, a propaganda machine that started in the early writings in Greek mythology. That was with Hesiod and Homer. And it was very intentional. And really what was happening at the time was that women held property rights and name rights. So everything was passed down the matrilineal side of the family, and men wanted that. And so all of this sort of started. And everything works in cycles, right? Even when we go into the energy of the divine feminine is very connected to moon cycles, menstrual cycles, to the cycles of the earth, the seasons, right? There's always a life, a birth, a life, a death, a rebirth, right? So birth, life, death, that cycle is constantly happening. And so it makes sense that, given the cyclical nature of things, that the divine feminine presence would have taken some time to go into the underworld, right? And while the divine feminine presence has been in the underworld, that patriarchal presence has really sort of come to the forefront. And it is a much more dominating presence. It is a presence that has needed to suppress and oppress and change the narrative to show women as weak and needing to be subjugated. And I want to be clear here that this is not like, you know, to hate men, right? Men are amazing. I love as many men as I love women. You know, I don't love every man. I don't love every woman. You know, I love the oneness of all of our connection, but you know, like, I love men. This isn't about men bashing, right? It is about getting to a space of how can each of us as individuals, how can you be a part of deconstructing the toxic masculine that is prevalent in all of our society, right? And because it's hurting people, it's hurting women, it's hurting people of color, it's hurting trans people, it's hurting differently abled people, it's hurting everyone who is not a white man. And so it is up to us in our own way. It's up to you in your own way. And this can happen in whatever your field is. You do it in a way that aligns with your truth, right? My truth happens to be as a healer and a channel of the divine feminine. And so I feel that my role is to really support all of us in healing the parts of us that are resonant with toxic masculinity, toxic patriarchy. I also grew up and was steeped. I was conceived in the patriarchy, I was gestated in the patriarchy, and I was birthed into the patriarchy, and I was raised in the patriarchy. It has been ingrained in me, right? As well as the wounds. So I have benefited too, as a white female, I've benefited from the patriarchal structure in a lot of ways, even while I've been oppressed in other ways. And there are, you know, varying levels of oppression within that. I've been reading a lot of really amazing women of color lately, and this is something that Rachel Ricketts addresses in her book, Do Better, which is a fascinating look at this and at that, you know, different ways in which people are oppressed and different amounts of oppression, so to speak, right? And so what we really can do is we can do our part, right? And the best way for each of us to do our part is to do it within the area of resonance for you. So, and that can, when we start to talk then about the activating the divine feminine, really what that means is that you have the opportunity to work with the goddess archetypes, the divine feminine archetypes, to activate the remembrance of them, because again, you have the remembrance of that power and that worthiness and that voice and that wisdom and that intuitive connection and that sense of really deep sisterhood and spirituality. That's all within you as a woman and as a physical presence, and it's with you within your soul lineage as well. And so to activate that energy and then to take it out into the world with you, where however you interact in the world, right? Whether that's as a healer or a lawyer or an accountant or a clerk in a retail store, right? If you activate the archetypes of the divine feminine within you, you are carrying that bit of healing out into the world. And for every woman, every person really, but I'm really speaking to women here, if you activate that remembrance of power within you, and this is one of my passions, is to support women in activating that remembrance within them. So if you activate the remembrance of the power of who you are within you, that lights you up. It lights your presence up. It takes you, it shows you as a light in the world, and it gives permission to other women to do the same. So when other women see a woman in power, and a lot of this speaks to needing to heal the sister wound too, because this is going to happen some. As woman comes into power, the patriarchal, the innate patriarchal energy within us, right? The wounding of the patriarchy within us in some people is going to cause jealousy. There is a thing, such a thing as women, you know, stepping over each other, pulling each other down. What I like to believe though, is that as more and more of us wake up and as we show ourselves to be examples of real sovereign empowerment, divine feminine empowerment out in the world, as we show ourselves to be that, as we remember that for ourselves and we light that ourselves up with that, as you do that, other women are going to recognize that power within themselves. And we have the opportunity to help remind them of who they are. Like if you remind your girlfriends and your family members of how powerful they are, right? And you hold that space from your own space of remembering it. If you do that, then that gives them permission to also do that. And then when that person does it, the next woman gets to see that and do that as well. And that is so incredibly powerful. So the divine feminine archetypes, or the goddess archetypes, and I'm going to be talking a lot about these in the upcoming videos that I do. You know, we have the archetypes of the healer, the lover, the mother, the dark goddess, the mystic. I mean, there's so many, the maiden, the crone, like there are many, many divine feminine archetypes. There are 6 primary that I work with. And those even, I mean, you might really resonate with one, but you might have other sort of archetypal energies working through you. So I really resonate with healer. That is how I show up in the world. I also really resonate with the mystic archetype. I am also a psychic medium, so that makes a lot of sense. Those 2 archetypes are really inextricably woven within my fabric. I really resonate with goddesses in both of those lineages. So really resonate with, you know, Bridget and Ishel and Isis and that, you know, and others, you know, on the healer side, and really identify with Penelope and other goddesses and the mystic side of that. But I also really work with a lot of the other archetypes all the time. And so, for example, I've been working, especially over the winter, I really felt the need to go to the underworld and do some deep shadow work. And so really activated that dark goddess archetype within me, because it helped me to go into the shadow. And so I worked with, you know, Hecate, who I love, and, you know, the Morrigan and other, you know, goddesses that resonate with that, to really support me in going into that underworld, that unconscious place within me, to heal that. When I wanted to activate more pleasure, I'm not feel guilty through the, you know, of pleasure, right? And to really work with some of my sexual wounding from being raped, I worked with the Venus, the lover archetype. Working with Venus really supported me in getting to a place of understanding the beauty of pleasure and not feeling shame around feeling pleasure. And, you know, it could go on and on, right? So if you want to work on being more intuitive, consciously working with and activating that mystic archetype within you can be really powerful. Oh, also when everything started happening, you know, when the pandemic hit and there was a lot of political unrest and turmoil, I really wanted to use my voice in a way that I hadn't before. And I had a lot of fear around using my voice, a lot of that from witch wounding and you know, patriarchal wounding from past lives. And I worked very consciously with the warrior archetype, with the archetype of the goddesses like Freya and Sekhmet and Bast. And, you know, that activating that warrior archetype, Athena, in me really supported me in finding a new resonance, and it supported me in feeling more courageous in my expression and being able to say things that I had felt intimidated to speak to earlier. And so when I talk about activating these presences within you, and I'll talk more about how to do that again in upcoming videos. You can do it through healing work though. You can do it through ritual work, ceremony work. You can do it through, you know, calling the goddess in your meditation and communicating with her throughout the day and asking her for support with the thing that you're working on. So there's a lot of ways to do that. The importance of it is that as we as we work with those archetypal energies, we empower ourselves. We remember our sovereignty. We remember how effing powerful we are, and we activate that deep remembrance from thousands of years ago of the wisdom that is within us, the wisdom that we are, the wisdom that we hold. We have deeper access to that. We have greater power with that. We have greater facility to utilize it. Our expression changes. How we carry ourselves in the world changes. It is a beautiful and magical way to choose how you want to interact differently with the world, and then consciously work with energy in order to affect those changes. And so going back to how I started this was, you know, this is needed in the world right now. The patriarchy is sort of kicking and screaming. It is in a decline, and that is because the systems of oppression that have upheld it and that we have all been complicit in some way, shape, or form, even those who have been oppressed have been in the paradigm of it, right? And as people are saying no way, and are speaking out and are marching and are, you know, using their voices and using their money to demand change, the patriarchy is beginning to splinter, right? And we're seeing it. We are seeing that around us. It has been chaotic. It has been challenging. It has been trying in so many ways. And yet it's a beautiful process. And one that is indicative of that breakdown, right? It is the process of decay, and there is a new cycle starting. There's a new cycle starting, and we get to operate within that in however we choose to operate within that. You have complete sovereignty. And so if you are like me, you have a choice that you can make, is to really activate and remember the sovereignty of that divine feminine principle within you, that you are a creatrix, that you are capable of bringing about tremendous life transforming birth into the world. You are capable of living in I have so many transmissions going through me right now. I am like lit up. You are capable of really creating massive transformation and change. We are part of the rebirth, right? We are a part of the rebirth, and we really get to choose how we want to show up within that rebirthing process. And so I'd love to hear in the comments. I would love to hear how this resonates with you, what's coming up for you, what you've been working on, what you want to be working on, what you want to hear from me about this. I am really passionate about sharing stories, because when we listen to the voices of women, the story changes, right? The history, there's a herstory too, right? And when we share that, there is a lot of healing that can come through in that. It can be very powerful. So I love sharing stories. I love the transmissions that come through in those stories. And I love to talk about all things goddess, divine feminine. I will break down the archetypes individually and how you can work with each one individually. But I would love to hear, like, what do you want to know more about? What is lighting you up? What are you wanting to bring forth into the world? So I would love if you subscribe to my channel, and you can do that by clicking the subscribe button. And I look forward to being connected with you and learning and expanding and growing and healing alongside you. Thank you so much, and take care. Bye.